let's talk Jatiswaram. When you learn a Jatiswaram, you will constantly hear a couple of terms recurring in your classroom. So, we are going to look at all the terms, define them for you so that whenever they come, you use it freely because you know what it means, right? So, let's start with the word Jatiswaram itself. So, you know that Jatiswaram is a nritta piece which has pure dance, meaning that you don't convey emotion. So, it is a nritta piece, right. Jati and Swaram, and this word is made of these two words. Jati are percussive syllables, meaning tat jam tari takata, taka jam tari takate. These are words which do not mean anything particular, but they are used for the musical or percussive quality of the syllables. That is Jati. When you come to Swaram, they are musical notes. So, a Jatiswaram is a piece which is formalized by the Tanjore quartet, which has Jati and several Swarams, right. So, when you look at the Jati as it is, let us go one step deeper and understand what a Jati means, what it takes for you to call a rhythmic piece a Jati. So, the Jati needs a couple of things. First, it needs a first half and a second half, which is a Purvangam and an Uttarangam. Purva Angam is the before half, Uttarangam is the second latter half. When you look at the Purvangam, you have the syllables, and the Uttarangam has something called the Tirmanam. As a rule, all the Jatis have to be fit into one talam or the other. In this Jatiswaram, which is the Kalyani Jatiswaram, the talam is Rupakam. So, the Jati will fall into the Rupaka talam, right. And the Uttarangam or the second half has something called the Tirmanam. Tirmanam is actually the concluding part of a Jati. The concluding parts like Taddinkidna tum, Taddinkidna tum, Taddinkidna tum, or Kidataka Tarikita tum, Kidataka Tarikita tum, Kidataka Tarikita tum. These are various syllables which denote the conclusion of a particular piece, which is Tirmanam. These Tirmanams either, like I said, repeat thrice or in multiples of 3. So, now you know that the Jati has a Purvangam and an Uttarangam, and the Uttarangam ends with the Tirmanam. All of this should fit into one talam or the other. This is the Jati. Now, let us look into the next part, which are the actual dance movements which we do in the Jatiswaram, right. So, when we look at the dance movements or the dance parts of the Jatiswaram, let us say, it starts with the Tattu. Tattu literally means a clap. Tattu here means striking of the foot alternatively, and we learn Bharatanatyam starting with the Tattadavu, which is to strike. So, the Tattu is the part which comes before you start the Jati, right, to sort of get into the mode of getting into a Jati, to giving your musicians a cue that you have to start the Jati, because the singer has to stop singing and the Nattavangam player has to get into the Jati. So, that is like sort of a cue, and as a dancer you are also increasing your heart rate and getting ready for action. So, that is your Tattu. And after that you also have a word called Korvai. So, what is a Korvai? Korvai is very similar to the Jati, but in a Korvai same things apply, that you have a particular combination of movements or adavas, and it ends with a Tirmanam, it should fall in Talam. So, what is different about a Korvai and a Jati? Jati is when you are reciting the syllable and dancing to it. Korvai is a standalone which could be done to a swaram also. So, when we look at the Jatiswaram, you have only one Jati and multiple Korvais, right. So, the Korvai is this rhythmical structure which is strung together and it ends with a Tirmanam and it falls into a Talam, and it is done to the Swaram. So, we have the Korvai in place. So, you have the Tattu, you have the Korvai, and of course, Tattu, Jati and the Korvai. And then there is another new addition when you learn a Jatiswaram, which is the Mei Adavu. Mei basically means the body. Adavu is the fundamental unit, let us say, of Bharatanatyam, Adavu. But this does not constitute a part of the many Adavus you do before your Alaripu. This is not an Adavu per se. But then why are we calling it a Mei Adavu? When every Adavu is to do with the body, why is it special? It uses the torso movement along with the hand, and it flows in a particular way which is not like a normal Adavu. And the intent of the Mei Adavu is to do two things. One is to embellish and add a kind of a softness to the piece and also mark certain endings or beginnings in the piece. That is, the Mei Adavu will come once. When you start with the Jati and you finish the Jati, you will end that with the Mei Adavu. Then you will have Pallavi many times, and then when you do the Anupallavi, you will mark that with the Mei Adavu. And when you do all your charanams, and you will end it again with the same Mei Adavu. So, it sort of is like a threshold, you know. You start something, you stop something, and then you start another new chapter. So, it is like that in between place is what the Mei Adavu fills. So, these are the small units of dance terminology which you need to know when you are learning a Jatiswaram. So, now let us go into the musical structure. It is a fairly simple musical structure. You have Jati, you have Swaram, that is it. But how does the Swaram go? You have the Pallavi, which is the first line, the Anupallavi, which literally means what follows the Pallavi, which is the next part, which will lead back to the Pallavi again. And then you have several Charanam, which are longer Swaras, which run and then you again connect it back to the Pallavi. So, every time you finish one segment, you connect it back to the Pallavi. Pallavi is sung 100 times. Even if we count, we will actually be right. It will be close to at least more than 70 times you sing and you hear. So, that is like sort of the first part of the Jatiswaram until you hear the Anupallavi. And then after the Anupallavi, you will have the multiple Charanams. Pallavi is repeated many times, as I told you. Anupallavi Charanam is repeated 1 or 2 times maximum. So, this is your musical structure, and then I explain the dance structure to you. So, you start with the Tattu, striking, and then you have the Jati followed by the Mei Adavu, and then you start Korvai 1, Korvai 2, Korvai 3, all to Pallavis. So, the same line is repeated again and again, but you are putting different Korvais to dance it. And the third Korvai, generally, this is in general, it leads you into the Anupallavi. And once you do the third Korvai, which has the Pallavi and Anupallavi together, you have the Mei Adavu. And following that, you will have Charanam 1, Charanam 2, Charanam 3 with gaps in between where you go back to the Pallavi every time. So, the Mei Adavu is always done to the Pallavi, right. So, this forms the Jatiswaram.